Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's SugarCRM user group, where we'll be talking about Sugar's new and exciting purpose-built analytics solution. It's really interesting. We're actually super interested to hear more about it, so we hope that you are as well. Before we begin, just want to cover some basics. We always record, as you know, hopefully, if you've been with us before, so you can expect a follow-up email to this, so you can go back and reference this later. And we hope that everyone's safe and healthy, and we appreciate those of you who are able to join us today. So my name is Deneen Madura. I'm the Director of Marketing. And as usual, we have with us Megan Sheehan, our Trainer and Business Analyst, and Justin Kielthau, our Director of Services. And we're very fortunate today to also have a special guest from SugarCRM, the product management team. Jake Cornelius is here, and he is going to show us a couple of little extra fun snippets of the Sugar Discover tool. So with that, I'm going to pass the floor to Justin. And one reminder I also forgot to mention, again, as usual, chat. If you have any questions, this is a new tool, so I'm sure questions will come up. Feel free to pop those in there, and we'll get to those as we can. Justin, take it away.
Thank you, Deneen. First, we have our agenda here. We're going to do a brief overview of what Sugar Discover is, and then we're going to have a demonstration of Sugar Discover itself, followed by a brief comparison of what Sugar Discover can do versus Sugar Reports that we all know and love within the Sugar application, and the Sugar Discover pricing and implementation process. What's the cost there and what's that look like? And then Jake is going to share with us the Sugar Discover roadmap and some other interesting tidbits. And then, as always, we'll cover general Sugar releases and the Sugar roadmap. So what is Sugar Discover? It's a really awesome reporting tool. It was built not too long ago. Jake, when did you start building it?
So we started about 2 years ago as a small startup team and built up a package solution around analytics for CRM and marketing use cases, and started working closely with the Sugar team and decided that there was a great match there, and officially joined the Sugar team in May of last year.
And I understand you built it starting 2 years ago, so it's obviously built on the most recent technologies. So you started with the idea of making this reporting simpler and a little more automated. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, so myself and my co-founders, we've done a number of analytic startups over the last couple of decades. And primarily, we had always built solutions that were general purpose BI or data integration or big data platforms. When we started the Discover initiative, we really wanted to kind of flip the analytics paradigm on its head, kind of looking at some of the challenges that we saw with existing BI tools on the market, how they were used, and how we all have so much data to deal with today. It's no longer a challenge to figure out where the data is. The big challenge is understanding how to use it to make actionable business insights. So with Sugar Discover, one of the core kind of visions that we had for the product is to bake into the experience a lot of automated analytics to not only allow you to build pre-built reports and dashboards to answer the questions you know to ask, but to also proactively monitor the metrics you care about, look for unusual changes, relationships between patterns in your data, and surface those through automated insights as kind of an entry point to analysis. So not only can you build content to answer those questions in advance, but the system is smart enough to notify you when those metrics are performing unusually and lead you to some potential reasons for why those metrics may have recently changed. So we're really trying to quickly take folks to what is going on in my business that I should care about, and what actions should I take to react to those changes.
Great, thank you. I did briefly want to cover Sugar Discover and Sugar's pillars. For those of you who don't know, Sugar has these pillars that they're focusing on with all of their products: Sugar Market, SugarCRM, Sugar Discover, Hint. 3 of those are, the first one being time aware, and this is definitely my favorite of all the pillars. A time-aware CRM is extremely powerful. CRMs have been for years promising and have had that full 360-degree view of our customers, but now we can gain insights over time. And that's not limited to just Sugar Discover with reporting over time and tracking changes to data, but even getting into Sugar's enhancements to their BPM tool for time-based actions and alerts like SLA management. But definitely Discover itself is time aware. It's taking those snapshots. It's monitoring changes to fields like statuses or stages. Certainly the no touch, like you just mentioned, Sugar Discover is automatically importing that data. It's going to have automated reporting and analytics put together for you. It's going to send you alerts without ever touching the system. Of course, if you want to dive in and get into the system, you can build your own very advanced reports. And finally, that continuous cloud innovation. Just like Sugar's other products, Sugar Discover is hosted on Amazon's AWS cloud and thus is able to leverage their #1 rated cloud. There's really no competitor to Amazon at this point, and that means Sugar is investing in their products, not in their infrastructure. Other companies are spending billions of dollars on their infrastructure, while Sugar lets Amazon do that much for them. The old way of reporting in analytics, it was complex, high total cost of ownership, long time to value, and manual. Whether you were doing that just in CRM or exporting data and trying to manage snapshots in time in spreadsheets, or you were using an ETL tool to pull data out of a system, put it into a data lake or what have you, and trying to build BI tools on top of that, getting into your data modeling. And then you'd end up with hundreds of reports, making it difficult to find the reports you built, or you're writing your own complex SQL. With Sugar Discover, it's simple, it's a low total cost of ownership, it's a very fast time to value, and it's automated. To see it, you log into Sugar. All users, Sugar users can log into Sugar Discover. You can see those metrics. You're going to get insights via messaging. So again, it's very simple to use, as we'll see in a minute from Megan's demo. Just a little bit under the hood here, Sugar Discover syncs data automatically from your Sugar Cell instance or enterprise instance. And that includes accounts, contacts, opportunities, revenue line items, including their custom fields. We'll see on the roadmap that more entities are coming soon, custom entities, cases, things like that. Right now we're capturing a daily snapshot so you can see how your data is changing over time. Your forecasting, for example, your account customer lists or lead lists. And again, I've already mentioned it includes that library of pre-built reports and analyses so that you can quickly get to the data you want, as well as a very nice report builder to easily create your own reports. One of the things I really like about Sugar Discover that is missing from reports in Sugar is you can build custom calculated fields. You can do math against fields and then add those to your reports, and I think that's extremely powerful. And we already mentioned alerts can be delivered via text or Slack, and we're going to be getting much more visibility into that, as we'll see from Jake in a minute. So great, what's that all mean? Well, I mentioned it's time aware, so you can get insights like you see on the screen here. How much time do opportunities spend in each stage in my sales pipeline? Is sales velocity increasing or decreasing? How are we doing at this point in the quarter versus this time in the previous quarters? What's the sales length? Where are opportunities dropping out of the funnel? All of those are extremely important to helping us improve our sales cycles. And you can get trend metrics as you're seeing here. You're seeing the snapshot data across the bottom there, win rate, and you can even see how you could potentially build calculated fields. What else does that mean? Well, historical comparisons. Again, we have our snapshot date. Here we're looking at a forecast projected ARR this month, pipeline, forecast, best case, committed, closed, so we can see how our pipeline is changing over time. And then I mentioned that no touch. You can get the insight feeds, automated analytics from those pre-built reports. You can drill into, get additional data. You can drag and drop additional fields onto a report to further segment your analysis. Again, those insights, the automated insights are going to surface changes to warn you what could be changing, what's important to you, and guiding you to what you need to know. Win rate by lead source, win rate by sales team. So some really good information there that's surfaced to you without a lot of work on your part. Megan?
All right, so Justin's kind of set the stage for me here, telling you what you can expect to see in SugarDiscover. Now I'm going to actually bring up SugarDiscover and walk you through the application. So this is SugarDiscover. It is a separate web application, so you log in through a separate URL to get to SugarDiscover. Not limited in terms of how many users you have, so as many people as you want to grant access to, whether or not they're Sugar users, you can give them SugarDiscover access. And when you log in, the first page that's going to come up is this insight feed. So this is the automated insights that Jake and Justin were talking about that are designed to help alert you to potentially important changes that are happening in your data. So as trends change, as things look a little different than maybe the normal look of how your data works or how your data flows, this is where you're going to get those alerts to see. And as Justin said, you can also get them through text message or through Slack. So lots of different ways to get alerted to these changes. All of these changes have the opportunity to click through for more information. So if I look, for example, at the second one here, we've got an alert that the average days in stage for opportunities in our qualification stage has increased. So it's got a little red indicator here telling me this is a negative change. We don't want our opportunities to be spending more time in the qualification stage. We can see over here on the right exactly how much change we're talking about. So it's a 27% change over last month. We can see this month versus last month. But if I want to know even more than that, I can click in directly from here to see the underlying data and to see additional insights. So this is what Jake was saying in terms of just digging in a little deeper, understanding a little bit more about what might be driving this change. So I can see on the chart here a little bit more of the history. I can see the change over time of how long it generally takes on average for our opportunities to move out of the qualification stage. And I can see that we had a nice little decrease going on here in the January to February range. And since mid-February here, we've been going the opposite direction. Our average time in the stage has been increasing. So that gives me maybe a better idea to think about what may have changed in terms of our product line, in terms of our sales process, in terms of our team, or what we're working on, that might have changed, since mid-February. It kind of helps me nail down what time period I might want to be thinking about. Over here on the right, I can see that insight that popped up on my feed on my homepage, but I can also see some additional related insights. So I can see, for example, how long is this taking for different sales teams? So I can see the enterprise team is sort of the worst offender here. They're spending the most time in the qualification stage, which if that's sort of my team tackling complex deals, it makes sense that that might take a little bit longer to do qualification than maybe some of my simpler deals handled by my regional teams. I can also see, by industry or by other categorizations, so I can see what else I might need to dig into to try to understand what's happening here. And that's going to be true for any of our insights. We'll go ahead and look at one more of these just as another example. This one you can see from the little green indicator is actually an area where we see improvement. So it's obviously important to not only look for things that are going wrong, but also you want to know when things are going right, because that gives you a chance to kind of, again, dig in and understand what might be driving that change. So here we've got an improvement in our win rate. It's actually 5% higher than predicted or than average. So again, I can click in here, I can see a little bit more information. I can see wider period of time, how has that changed? So it looks like our win rate's been steadily increasing with a little bit up and down, but basically steadily increasing since early March. And again, over on the right side of the screen, I can see more information. So I can see, different lead sources that are really contributing to that. Our purchase list lead source and our outbound lead source are really doing well. So that maybe tells me that, wherever that source was from that really good list that we purchased, we might want to go back and get some more information from them. I can see it broken down by team as well. So I can see the central team is one that's really being able to take advantage of that. Actually, really, even the West team as well has a 32% increase. So overall, the central team is doing better, but both teams had a pretty significant increase month over month. All right, so that gives you a little bit of a feel for how that insight feed works. So again, that's where you're getting those automated alerts, being proactively notified about things that are changing. I want to spend a little bit of time looking at the library of reports here with a couple of things in my mind as I sort of pick which reports to show you. As you can see, there's a pretty big library of reports available here. But I really wanted to focus on sort of, number one, highlighting some of the different features that are available with SugarDiscover. And number two, really thinking through some of those use cases for how would you use some of this data. So I'm going to start with a report called Days in Stage. This is actually the same report that was driving the first insight we looked at with the time and the qualification stage. Only here, rather than focusing only on the qualification stage, which is what was generating the insight, we're looking at sort of the bigger picture. We're seeing all of our stages here at once. So I can see all of the stages, how they've changed over time. I could always choose to focus in on one or the other with filters, but I think this is just a nice intro to that change over time aspect of SugarDiscover, which is really game changing for us used to being using sugar reports. Sugar reports are great, we love them, but they only show us the current moment in time, unless you're doing a lot of work to sort of keep track of that history somehow in sugar and report off of it. So again, with SugarDiscover taking those daily snapshots, you can go back through time and you can see how the data is changing over that time period. And so that really allows you to look for insights. I can see which stage is this? The evaluation stage, again, also increasing at this point in time, whereas the negotiation stage looks like we had a nice little decrease going on there. We're starting to go back up a little bit there as well at the end. And here as well, when I go through my report library, again, I may see some insights over on the right side of my screen that are going to allow me to dig in deeper and see connections and see some of those changes, like what's really most important or most impactful from all of this data that I'm looking at. I'm not going to use it yet, but I do also have my report builder over here on the left side, so that if I wanted to further dig in, maybe apply some additional filters, narrow down what I'm looking at, I can go ahead and modify some of those report filters and change what the report's doing right here on the fly. Well, let's go ahead and take a look at another report. I'm going to pull up the flow analysis report this time. This is a different way of using that data snapshot functionality. So here we're not necessarily looking so much at the change over time in terms of how does my data look different today versus yesterday, but we're using that same capability of capturing those snapshots to look at how has my data flowed through my process over time. So in this case, we're looking at the sales process. We're looking at how have my opportunities moved through my sales process? How has the sales stage on my opportunities changed over time? And so this particular report is showing me where do my opportunities go next. So when I look at my opportunities that start off in my lead stage, which is the first stage in the sales process here, 6,000 of them advance to the discovery stage, whereas 9,000 of them are suspended or abandoned. So it really kind of gives me a feel for how are things moving through my sales process. I really like the feature where I can click to highlight a particular stage and kind of look at where are things moving to that stage from. So in this case, when are we abandoning deals? When are we saying, no, it doesn't make sense to move forward with this particular opportunity? And as you might expect, most of that is happening during the early stages of my process when I've got a lead or when I'm doing discovery or maybe down here in the qualification stage, which makes sense. If we were getting all the way to negotiation and then realizing that, hey, wait a minute, there's not a good fit here, something's probably wrong with our process at that point. And sort of along the same lines, I could look at, at what point in the sales sales process do I win opportunities typically? So again, as you might expect, I'm not jumping directly from the lead stage or the discovery stage to the closed won stage. I mostly go through negotiation to get there, with the occasional opportunity to skip directly from evaluation or qualification. So again, it just kind of helps me just narrow in and see, what does that process look like? How does my data generally move through my sales process? And then just sort of compare and contrast, there's another report that's similar but a little bit different. So kind of looking at the same data through a slightly different lens, visualizing it in a slightly different way. So this one is also looking at, how do my opportunities flow through my sales process? But it's focused in more on just the path to success. So how many of my opportunities move from the discovery stage to the qualification stage? How many of them move from there to the evaluation stage? And so I can see what's happening with my opportunities here. We kind of dropped off that first stage of the process in this particular report for whatever reason. And so we can see the count, we can see the percentage of how many of our opportunities are moving on through the process. Down at the bottom, we've got some overall information, and we also have some nice key information over here on the left side of the screen, which is how many days on average are we sending in that particular stage of the process. So I think what I really like about this visualization, the reason it speaks to me, is number one, it's just a nice visual picture. I can very clearly look at the picture and I can see what's happening here. I can see how much of my pipeline is continuing on successfully to the next stage. And I also like that there's just so much additional information right here at my fingertips. I can see it in counts or percentages. I can see that average time and stage. And again, over on the right, I've got more of those insights, so I could even see more information if I'm not already thinking about all of the things this might be telling me without even needing more of those insights. All right, and I want to pull one more out of my library, and then we're going to look a little bit at the process for creating reports. So I'm going to use this pipeline report. And what this one is showing me is, again, snapshots, so change over time with what my sales pipeline looks like at any given moment. And I really like this one because I can see an immediate use case for this report. I think this would be a great report to have on screen during a sales team meeting. So as your sales team is discussing what's happening with their pipeline, what opportunities they're working on, I think this is perfect to be able to see how that's changed over time, what's changed since last week or since a couple days ago in terms of what that pipeline looks like. Depending on what time period you're forecasting on, this one's showing me 3 months essentially. You could look at a longer period, a shorter period, as makes sense for your business. But I just really enjoy the ability to see what's happening overall with my data. Again, how it's changing over time. More and more of my pipeline is getting won. It looks like this business is probably operating on a monthly sales cycle, because at the end of the month, we kind of close things off and it looks like we maybe start over the next month. That also might just be an aspect of the data feed that we've got in this demo environment here. And then I guess I haven't shown this at all yet, so I better do that, is I can also drill through from here to look at more details about any of these data sets. So if I want to know more about what are these opportunities in this best case forecast, I can go ahead and I can drill in directly from here, and it's going to bring up whatever view is configured to be brought up next. In this case, it's a list of all of those opportunities grouped by person, grouped by stage. So giving me more information about what's happening with all of those opportunities in my forecast.
One thing to note here, Megan, that we don't show in the demo because it's just sample data, but you can also configure additional linking on the SugarCRM fields themselves. So if you wanted to enable users to click on a particular opportunity name and have it launch right inside of SugarCRM, you can set that right up in Discover as well. So I can actually click on one of those opportunities there and launch it right into SugarCRM, or if you wanted to enable linking on account names or really any field that we can tie back to a record inside Sugar, we can also enable dynamic links on those names as well.
Oh, nice. I did not even realize that was a function. So thanks for pointing that out. That's great to know.
You bet.
All right, I'm going to do a quick chat. I assumed Deneen would be interrupting me if I had any chat questions so far, but okay, nope, nothing so far.
You are correct.
Just want to make sure before I transition to the next step.
That's a good sign. That means you're being very thorough.
I hope so. All right, so then the other thing that I want to show you with SugarDiscover is the report builder and really how easy it is to build some pretty powerful reports. So I'm going to start with a simple example, and then I'm going to go to a couple more complicated examples after that. But I figured start simple, get to know the report builder a little bit, and then build on that. Oh, the first report I'm going to do, again, simple, something you could also do with sugar reporting, which is just trying to answer the question, which sales stage or which sales team has closed the most business so far this quarter? So I want to filter to closed won opportunities. I want to group it by team. I want to filter to this quarter and see who's doing the best right now. So over here on the left, we're now seeing that report builder that I said I wasn't going to go to yet earlier. Now I'm ready. So over here, we've got the ability to see all of the different fields that are being tracked to Discover, and I can use any of those in my report. So if I wanted to filter, for example, on sales stage, I can find stage in the list, click on it, and then select a filter on that. And then I can go ahead and I can select which stages I want to use. So we're going to go ahead and do closed one. There are other capabilities besides just filtering on a specific value here. So I can do more advanced, like contains, begins with kind of filtering. I can also do the top X values by filtering by some characteristic. But in this case, I want something pretty simple. I just want to get my closed won opportunities. As I have selected that, I can see that appear here at the top of my screen. So whenever I'm working with a report or building a report, I can see a list of all of the filters right there at the top, so I know exactly what I'm filtering on, what data is being included in that particular report. And we do also want to filter on the close date, so let me go ahead and do that right away. Same thing here, we're going to have a variety of different options for filtering types. Of course, we can do something specific to a particular date, before or after a date, on that date, empty, not empty, that sort of thing. But we also have some really nice functions for both relative dates and period to date filters. So the relative dates would be things like the past one day or the past 1 month, the current month, the next month, that sort of thing. And you've got a wide variety of different time periods available here to pick from. One of the, it's really small but really nice and helpful functions is this effective date range list here. So this will just tell you, based on what you've picked, what time period you're actually looking at currently. So I just find that really helpful if you're like, wait, what's the difference between a day versus a calendar day, a week versus a calendar week, for example. I can filter it and I can see the difference right there as I watch the dates change. So just really nice to kind of have that little function, but powerful. And not checked by default because you wouldn't want to use it in most situations, but if you ever had a report that you wanted to always be built off of the current date as opposed to changing based on the date that you're using the report, you can always anchor the report to a specific date and time. All right, but I said I wanted to do the quarter to date, so I'm going to come in here to the period to date filter, choose quarter to date. Again, you'll see that effective date range, so you know exactly what you're looking for or you get exactly what you're getting, and then go ahead and select that filter.
So Megan, we did have a question come in. They'd like to know if we at TAI have used Discover within our own sales team, and if we have, if we've run into anything that we would fix or like to fix.
Unfortunately, we have not. That is something that we'd love to do down the line, but it's not something that we have taken advantage of yet. I don't know, Jake, if you have any examples. I believe Sugar is starting to use SugarDiscover internally, if I'm remembering correctly.
We are, yeah. So we've got a pretty sizable deployment on our own internal database. So this is now what we've moved our own sales ops team over. Then they present to the executive leadership through a series of Discover reports around some of the key metrics that we're tracking.
Awesome, that's great. All right, keep the questions coming if you've got any more. In the meantime, I'm going to jump back into my report here. So let's see. So far, we have filtered on stage and date. And so now we just need to start building the visualization here. Now that we've told SugarDiscover what data to include, what I want to see is how much money my teams have brought in. So I'm going to find the amount metric here, or amount field, and just put that in my metrics box. I could also click on it and tell it to go there, but I personally am a fan of drag and drop, so that's what I'm going to use here. And then I can see as soon as I did that, that popped into my report here so I can see what that looks like. Right now I've just got the total dollar value for all of my won opportunities for my date range, my quarter to date. I want to break that down by my sales team, so I'm going to go ahead and use my sales team as my columns. And again, it will immediately update. I can see my 4 different sales teams here, and I can see a comparison of how they're doing. And I will use this more in some of the other examples that we're going to do, but I could also change what that visualization looks like if I want to see it in a different format. So again, first example, pretty simple, something you could definitely do with sugar reports as well, but just kind of getting our feet wet in the report builder. The next example I'm going to walk through is going to start to use some of that change over time functionality using those data snapshots. So I'm going to try to answer the question, how has our pipeline changed over the last 30 days? Essentially pretty similar to the report we were looking at a few minutes ago, but I want to show you again how simple these things are to build. So the first thing that I'm going to have to do if I want to show more than just the current status of data is I'm going to need to remove this current snapshot filter. Sugar is going to put this on by default whenever we're creating a new report as a starting point. But anytime I want to do more of that change over time, I want to include those older data sets, those snapshots in time, I can take that filter off. And then I do want to go ahead and filter on that because I don't want to try to pull in like 2 years worth of snapshots right away. So let me go ahead and put a filter on. I'll do a relative, let's just say the last 30 days for now. So I'm going to see how has the pipeline changed in the last 30 days. And then I can start building and I can, again, see things change as I go. So let's just start by putting the amount in here. Again, right now I haven't told it how to group anything, so it's just throwing a giant value of here of my total pipeline for every added up for the last 30 days. So let's go ahead and break that down by snapshot date here. So let's bring that in as a column. And I'm also going to put a filter on. I don't necessarily need to see every single snapshot in time. Really just seeing a few of those is enough for me, just to kind of make it a little bit easier and not get overwhelming by trying to see 30 different snapshots at once. So I can filter on this day of the week field, which is a calculated field, by the way, that Justin was talking about with those, that capability to add calculated fields. You can see the little equal sign here telling me that it's a calculated field. And if I hover over it, I can read the calculation there is really just taking the date of the snapshot and converting it to a day of the week. So let's just do Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday here to get three times a week seems like enough. All right, so this is currently showing me the overall size of my sales pipeline. I would like to see that broken down by stage. So again, I can just come in here and I can find that capability. I'm going to actually switch this first before I do that to a stacked column because that's how I'm going to want to show it. And then I can, whoops, move this where I want it. Easy enough to change as you go, as you can see. As once you make a change, you can see what the impact is. And then I can add my stage in as my color stack. So I can see this is what my sales pipeline looked like, 3 times a week over the last month. This is how it's changed. I can see it's growing. I can see which stages are growing and which stages maybe are not. Maybe I wouldn't want to show my suspended and my lost opportunities. I can always go filter on that as well. Let's add a filter on stage and just not show my lost and my suspended opportunities. And I can easily take those back out of the picture and focus in just on the sort of the active pipeline. All right, still not seeing any questions, so I will continue on to the last example I have here, and this one's a little bit different. So this time the question that I'm going to try to answer is, how long does it take for a salesperson to ramp up? Like, what should I expect in the first 6 months after I hire a salesperson? And also, has that changed over time? Are we getting better at getting our salespeople started and running, or is it actually taking them longer over time to get up and running? And maybe I can dig in then to try to understand why that might be. So for this report, I'm going to do a pivot table visualization, and I'm going to want to look at how much money my salespeople are bringing in new sales. So I'm going to find the new ARR, which again is just a calculated field for my opportunities that are marked as new business. So it's just the sales opportunity amount, but filtered to won opportunities and new business. And then I'm going to want to break this down based on how long someone's been a user. So I've got this user created date field that I can use for that. And I don't actually want to look at it by specific date. I want to group it a little bit more than that. So I'm going to use the year that my users were created. For any of our date fields, sort of similarly to how Sugar Report gives you the capability to group by different time periods, same functionality is available here to group into different time periods. So I'll use my year to group on that. All right, so now I can see sort of what happened with my salesperson over the course of the first year, but I'd like to break that down a little bit more and maybe focus in just on the first 6 months. So I've got this calculated field for tenure, which is how long someone's been an employee, and I can go ahead and use that in my report. And let's filter on that so that we're only seeing the first 6 months. So I was pretty quickly able to find the data that I needed to generate a report so I can see what's happening over time with my salesperson. This is pretty awesome, pretty great, but it's still sort of hard to look at and read. Sugar Discover has a really nice color scale feature that I can use to make this even better. So this will just automatically apply some colors, and you can scale with different values depending on how you want that visualized. So I want smaller numbers to be red and bigger numbers to be green. So I'll use the red, yellow, green visualization here. And then that makes it really quick and easy for me to look at this report. And I can see, generally speaking, it's taking about 3 months before my salesperson really starts having much success in making sales. It looks like 2018, for whatever reason, was a better year. Maybe we had different sales training we were using then. Maybe we've added a whole bunch of new products that are hard for the new salespeople to learn this year, and that's why it's taking them longer this year. So again, it kind of gives me a starting place to start understanding how things have changed over time. I can always dig in further and understand the wider context of my business in order to help answer some of the questions that this might bring to mind. That is the end of what I had planned to demo today in Sugar Discover. So if no one has any other questions, we're going to switch back to our slides, and Justin's going to share a couple more things with you. And then we're going to turn it over to Jake to talk a little bit about what's coming next with Sugar Discover.
Okay, thank you, Megan. That was very interesting. I'm going to just briefly cover Sugar Discover versus Sugar Reports. Obviously, Sugar Discover is an external application that reads data out of SugarCRM. And doing that allows it to compare data over time and define calculations like you saw, those calculated fields, as well as what you want to report on. It is available to all of your Sugar users. It is not priced per user. And again, it includes those automated insights we saw at the beginning of the demo, which is just really cool. I love that time-aware CRM aspect of all of this. Compared to Sugar Reports, which are obviously available directly within SugarCRM, although I think we're going to see on the roadmap getting some of that Discover data into Sugar as well. And within Sugar, you can report on all of your Sugar data. Again, Sugar Discover is going to start reading more and more data out of SugarCRM. And then clicking through to individual records, which Jake said you can do in Sugar Discover as well. So really, there's a whole lot of really cool stuff you can do in Sugar Discover. And Sugar Reports will always be there. It's still a good product. Sugar Discover is just a fancy new thing.
Hey guys, we did have a question come in. And maybe this is a Jake question as well, because part of it is focused on the future roadmap. Wondering if Discover works on custom modules, and if not, is that something that would be on the roadmap?
Yeah, so when we first launched Sugar Discover about 4 months ago now, we did center in and around opportunity and pipeline management as kind of the default offering. So if your use case centers in and around opportunity management, so data coming from accounts and opportunities, revenue line items. Those are use cases that we onboard usually within 24 to 48 hours because we've got those templatized out so that it's very quick to onboard. Now that said, we don't want you to preclude your interest in SugarDiscover if you have other modules that you want to port against. Those are things that we can definitely facilitate through some customization on our side. So definitely don't shy away from contacting us about potentially using SugarDiscover. We have the ability to define custom data sets working with customers around your specific use cases. We know the power and flexibility of SugarCRM allows folks to do some highly customized things. And as such, we've built a flexible pipeline under the covers. And later, when you see on the roadmap, we will be adding a data set design user interface later this year. But for now, if you have some very specific needs, you'll just have to work with folks like technology advisors and the Sugar onboarding team to do some of those customizations. But it can report against custom modules. And if you've added any custom fields to any of the data sets that we offer out of the box today, like revenue line items and opportunities and accounts, then all of those custom fields are going to automatically be imported into SugarDiscover and available. And I can show you a little bit about that when I give a demo. I'll give you a little peek under the covers at what that data looks like under the covers, so you can see how that works. And then on the roadmap, we, as Megan and Denise mentioned, later this year, we are going to add more and more templatized out of the box solutions around the other pillars of Sugar, namely Market and SugarServe.
Awesome. Thanks for that clarification, Jake. I hope that answered your question. It sure answered mine.
Thank you. Megan, next slide. Okay, SugarDiscover pricing. It is list price for SugarDiscover is 50% of the list price for your Sugar subscription. We just have to have a conversation about that pricing and go from there. And there is a one-time implementation fee of $5,000 that includes the initial setup, which includes setting up the nightly data sync, and as well as reading your old audit data to get an initial historical data set so you can immediately see what your data looked like in the past and start comparing that to what it is now to get those insights immediately out of the system.
All right, so with that, we're going to turn things over to Jake.
Great. Let me share my desktop here. Okay. I'll start with a couple of slides, and then when I jump into a demo, I'll go over some of those questions that came up. So let me get the Zoom thing out of my way. There we go. Okay. So I'm going to show you some forward-looking statements. I have to throw this up here. This is our current intentions of when we plan to release stuff. Obviously, anything can happen, as I think we've all seen over the last couple of weeks. There's unforeseen things that can come up, but right now, we feel pretty confident that this will be our focus for the year. But as always, in the role of product manager, I'm always interested in hearing interesting use cases you've come up with. If you get the opportunity to do a trial of SugarDiscover and have feedback, by all means, reach out to me, and I'd love to hear your feedback about what you like, what you dislike, and where you'd like to see the product go. We're on the beginning of a journey, and we have a lot of really cool things planned. So the way we typically present the roadmap to give you a feel for when things are coming are in terms of now, next, and future. So now, the now bucket that I'll go into first are things that are under active development. And then where we are right now in our release cycle, we're right at the end of our quarterly release cycle. So the things that I'm going to be talking about in the now bucket are actually coming out in April. So you'll be able to see some of that stuff. When we get into the next category, those are a little bit longer. So those are in the 2 to 3 quarter out range. Still fairly confident those are the focus areas. And then future is anything beyond that is high on our priority list. So that gives you kind of a little context about when you might see some of the capabilities I'm going to show come out. And so starting with what we'll be releasing next month, we've put a strong focus in the last few months around creating a more tightly integrated experience with core sugar itself. And the first capability that we'll be rolling out is integration with sugar dashlets. And this is going to allow you to take any content that you've built inside of Discover and share it via SugarCRM dashboard. So you'll be able to embed them right into your content. As we'll talk about security on the next slide, but right now Sugar Discover is a separate application. And users who have access to Discover are going to get access to the full data set. So if you have certain users that you don't want access to all the data for analysis purposes, this is also a great way where you can take specific pieces of content and share them more broadly throughout your organization. It's a simple MLP package, so similar to other plugins for the SugarCRM platform. You'll just be able to download the little plugin, install it through Module Loader in the admin section of SugarCRM, and then you'll see a new option. I'll go ahead and show you a quick demo of that to give you a feel for what it looks like. So here's one that I built earlier inside of SugarCRM, and you can see I've got a dashboard here with just a number of different Sugar Discover reports that I created. So very simple. If I wanted to walk through and build one, I'll just create a new dashboard here. I'll just call it Discover Demo. I'll add a row. Let's just add a couple of little reports. And when I add a dashlet, you'll see after you've installed the Discover package, you'll see a new option called Sugar Discover. When I select that, I'll get a list of Sugar Discover reports to choose from. And let's just go ahead and pick, we'll pick ARR net new. Save that. Shows up in the dashlet. Maybe we want to add one more. So maybe I'll add my win rate. And at that point, I could go ahead and save that dashboard, share it with other users throughout my organization, and people can consume that. And so now this dashboard can contain Discover content, anything else that you expose through dashlets on your dashboards, and they can see those right within the SugarCRM interface. There's a few little capabilities that you'll see in here. So I can toggle certain things, like I can show and hide the filters. If I wanted to dive into this report and make changes, there's a little launch out here where I could actually open this report directly inside of Sugar Discover. So if I want to get a bigger view, or maybe I want to make some changes to the filtering or bring some new attributes into play, I can launch right out into Sugar Discover. And then as Megan showed, Discovery Insights are a really interesting capability of Sugar Discover. And what happens with Discovery Insights, which are when we were looking in the full-fledged Discover, those are items that show up on the right-hand side here. These are all dynamically generated. So when we set up Discover for your instance, we go through a little analysis to look at what attributes in your data set are closely correlated with the other metrics in the data set. And so what happens is anytime I build a new report or I modify a report, under the covers, Discover will go out and look for, is there anything interesting in those related areas to that metric that might shed some additional context, some additional light on recent changes in that report. So those Discovery Insights, if there are some, you can see those right within here as well. So I can open up the little Discovery Insights for any visualization. And like I mentioned, I could launch out if I wanted to view that. So real simple way to now incorporate Discover content right within a single user experience through SugarCRM. The next thing that we're adding in the April release is the ability to create any number of custom stage fields. So Discover has some powerful capabilities in and around time, and we treat this notion of stage fields very specially. And essentially what it does is, if I go into the dataset editor and I say I want to treat something as a stage field, it's going to augment that data with additional kind of helper flags that allow us to answer specific questions. And I gave a quick example of this. So sales stage is probably the most common concept that we think of when we think about an opportunity pipeline. But we see a lot of customers that have other fields in their data set that represent some workflow or some process that we might want to understand where are opportunities within that workflow at different points in time. And so pricing might be a good one. Imagine I've got a pricing workflow where I can, I expect sales reps to be tracking, have we given pricing? Has finance approved it? Is the customer been given a quote? What is their response to that? So imagine that that's all represented in a field with those different values. When I configure that as a stage field, what happens under the covers of Discover is we go in there and we insert additional attributes that allow us to tag specifically when did that value change, and that's how we can do some really cool stuff around time that lets us tell how long has a particular opportunity been in a given stage. We can filter just on those interesting change points when it goes through the process. So I gave a little example, probably a little detailed for this report, but you can kind of see what happens under the covers. If I go back to the bottom of this table back in time, so September 12th, I can see that this opportunity was for the pricing workflow status was set to finance approved, and then on the 14th it changed to customer review. So what we do is when we detect that change, we'll go back and we'll tag it and say, hey, this changed yesterday. We'll flag it with that stage transition flag. And you can also then see not only where it transitioned to, but also what the prior stage value was for that pricing workflow. So a lot of cool, interesting analytics you can do with that. But this release will introduce the ability not just to treat the default sales stage as a custom stage field, but you can now configure any attribute within your sugar data set as a custom stage field. Oh, while we're on that, before I get to next, there was one kind of question that came up a little bit about the data sets and what gets loaded. I'm going to pop, this is not the sexiest part of the demo, but I'll pop in and kind of show you a little bit of what Sugar Discover data sets look like. So I'm going to take this one, which is a SugarCRM data set for opportunities. And I'm just going to go in there and edit it. And you can kind of see essentially what you're looking at here is a metadata layer sitting on top of the underlying database. So in here, I can do things like decide what fields do I want to show user. So since I mentioned, we're going to pull in every field from the different modules that go into making up a data set. And some of those may just be noise. Maybe they're fields that you were using for a prior use case that you're no longer using, or they're just not useful for analysis. This data set designer allows you to customize what end users see from an analytics standpoint. So I'm going to go ahead and unhide all the fields. You can kind of get a sense for a bunch of other fields that we're pulling out of Sugar that for this demo, I've just chosen not to show. And in here is where you could go in there, you could give them friendly names. I could decide to unhide certain ones. If I wanted to unhide it, I could just unhide this one. I could give it a custom name. If it's a metric, I'll filter on kind of measures. In here, I can do things like change what the formatting is, the default aggregation, or I can even, as Justin mentioned, I can add calculated fields here as well. It gives you a little sense of what's happening. So that would show you, and because this is automated, it will adapt to changes you make to those underlying modules. So let's say today you decide to introduce a new field on the accounts or the opportunities module, a new custom field. The next refresh of data, that would show up in the data set automatically. Now, any of those changes in the data set are going to automatically come in as unhidden fields. So if you added a custom field and you go into Discover the next day, just go into the data set editor, unhide it, and you'll see your new field show up in this list. So no need to change anything about the data set. Load process all automatically starts updating with the changes you've made. So let's go into the next couple of quarters beyond what we'll be releasing in April. Our next area of focus continues kind of on rolling Discover out to a wider audience, as well as continuing down the path of tighter integration with core Sugar. So we will be launching hosting of Discover in an EU zone. We're also in the process of internationalizing the product so that we can begin rolling out new translations. And we have Spanish, French, and Portuguese planned for Q2 of this year to offer those localized languages. And then on the right-hand side, we're doing some very deep integration with Sugar Identity and the security mechanisms within Sugar for controlling what modules and what fields different different users have access to. So the first step of this is integrating with Sugar Identity. And if you're not familiar with Sugar Identity, this is our authentication service that allows us to achieve things like single sign-on across different Sugar products. So today, if you were to use Discover, the user lists are independent. So you need a Sugar Discover login as well as a Sugar login. With the integration with Sugar Identity, all that can be managed centrally inside of the Cloud Console, and all those users will automatically be available inside of Sugar Discover. Then the last part of that is integration with team-based role permissions inside of Sugar. So now that, once we have Sugar Identity in place, we'll know exactly who you are from the Sugar world perspective. And then we'll be integrating with team-based security so that you can share reports with a broad set of users and have it respect their Sugar data security settings. So if there's particular fields in the data within the module that you don't want certain users to see, you can still share the reports, and those attributes that they don't have access to just won't be included in the report that they pull up. And then looking a little bit further towards the end of the year, this is, again, Justin alluded to this, our next big focus beyond the data level integration is expanding Discover to have more out-of-the-box capabilities with SugarServe and Sugar Market. So with SugarServe today, again, just in terms of support and what use cases will facilitate, because Serve is so architecturally similar to SugarCell or Sugar Enterprise, we're definitely able to report against data inside of Serve. So if you have SugarServe use cases and you want to use Discover on top of it even before we officially announce and roll out package content, that's something that we can enable just through some of that customized onboarding process and working with you on what types of use cases you want to see. And we wouldn't be pulling from a broad set of out-of-the-box libraries, but happy to facilitate walking you through how we can build data sets and help you answer the questions you want to answer in the customer service categories. And then finally, there's a number of other high priority enhancements that we'll be rolling out. So one is the ability to store, manage, and visualize targets and quotas. So this is a common limitation across a lot of CRMs. A lot of times the built-in reporting will be able to track, the performance of individual reps or individual teams, but all too often it's not in the context of what were our goals. So I can see what the values are, but I don't have the context of what were we trying to achieve. And so this capability is going to allow you to take any visualization, any query within Sugar Discover and add targets for them. So you can then not only see what their actual value is, if you look at some of the screenshots for how that might display in Discover, I can also see what the target was we set for that given metric. Really cool. It associates those targets with the particular intersections of attributes in the query that you use to define it. So anytime I build new reports, if there's targets available for those, they'll actually be visible right in the inside of the formatting panel. If I want to show targets for a given query and they're available and they're stored, then you'll be able to just turn that on as a simple formatting flag on that report. We're also going to be adding fiscal calendar support, new notifications via email, as well as a weekly digest feature. And then, as I mentioned before, a data set designer. So today, what we've been demoing, what Megan's been demoing, and what I've been showing you is data sets that we set up as part of that initial onboarding process. So you'll get a number of data sets out of the box that we've worked with you to set up. Our plans for later this year are to take what we're doing kind of behind the scenes to build those data sets, and wrapping a nice user interface around it allows you to build custom data sets. So you'll be able to do things like, I want to use let's say opportunities in my core module, but I also want to bring in attributes from these other related modules and show them in this common data set.
Jake, we actually had another question come in. I think it's more of a clarification. The question is asking, so current Discover reports, would those allow all users to see all data?
Yes. So today we don't integrate with team or role-based permissions inside of Discover. So if you look if I'm inside of Discover and I'm looking at, the users here, and this is a demo server, so I probably don't have a whole lot of users. But you can see my different users. These are actual independent. These are not the same as users that you define in SugarCRM today. Once we get IDM in place, it'll unlock our ability to then use that same set of security settings with the actual Sugar user to then enforce those team-based role permissions. So today, if you have a Sugar Discover login, you will have access to any of the data that's in these data sets. So that's why I mentioned with this April release, if that's a concern and you have certain users that you want to take advantage of specific pieces of Discover content without giving them full access to build any report that they want, that Dashlet integration is a nice way to take very specific queries via reports and embed them in Sugar dashboards and share them that way.
Perfect, thank you.
You bet. And I believe that is my last slide on the roadmap. Any other
Alrighty.
questions?
Doesn't look like it yet. Thanks so much, Jake. It's always so helpful to know what's coming in the future.
You bet.
And we do have a couple of other slides. I know we are at the top of the hour, so we'll understand if you have to leave, but if you can stick around for a couple more minutes. Just some other information about new releases that have happened since our last user group a couple months ago. So the Sugar 9.3 or Winter 20 release was out for our last user group. So I just did a couple of high-level summaries here. If you want all of the details, check out the recording from our last user group for that. But the two kind of big features in the Sugar 9.3 release were the automated renewal management feature in SugarCell and the enhanced case SLA tracking in SugarServe. So again, if you want more details on those, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager or follow up by looking for our last user group recording on our website. A couple of mobile releases have come out since our last user group. So mobile 16.1 had a couple of new features in it. One was some enhanced capabilities around tags. So you can now use tags when you're using global search on mobile to filter which results are being included in your search results, as well as being able to see tags on the record view for a particular record that you're looking at. And also some changes around quotes. So if you've been kind of keeping an eye on this, quotes has been added to mobile and kind of had some new features come along related to that over the last maybe 6 months or so. The change here is that the quoted line items footer on mobile now matches your quotes configuration. So any configuration changes you've made to show other fields in the footer area, those apply now to mobile as well as to the main Sugar web application. And Sugar Mobile 17.0, just a couple weeks ago, had some comment log enhancements so that long entries are truncated, that are shortened on the detail view, but you can tap in to view the full text. So that way your screen is not being taken over by a log comment long entry, but also if you need that context, you can drill in and see that. There have also been a couple of plugin releases. The IBM Notes plugin had a couple of updates in February, mostly around the TLS 1.2 enforcement in Sugar Cloud, where earlier versions of TLS are no longer supported. That's around just data security and connection, encryption and things like that. And also fixing some issues that came around a little bit after that. Do want to just remind you, if you are using the IBM Notes plugin, that Sugar has announced an end of life for supporting that plugin for this August. However, they've also recently announced that business partner Ambit Software will take over sales, support, and maintenance of that plugin. So if you are using the IBM Notes plugin, you do have the capability to transition over to Ambit Software and continue to use the plugin that they'll be managing. And then there was a minor update for the LinkedIn Sales Navigator plugin supporting the upcoming release. And then finally, just kind of keeping in mind, as Jake said, what's coming next. We've got next month the Q2 release that is not only the quarterly cloud release, but also the annual on-premise release. So if you are using Sugar on-premise, this is when you'll get all of the features that have come in the last 3 quarterly releases, as well as any new features that are coming in this April Q2 release. And also, if you are on premise, a reminder that Sugar 8 end of life or end of support is coming in April as well. That is 2 years after Sugar 8 was released. So if you have not already updated to Sugar 9, you should do that at your earliest opportunity, as Sugar 8 will no longer have any support, including any security patches, past April 30th. All right, I think that's it, unless any final questions come through. Next time let's see, May, we'll be doing our user group talking about sugar identity, which you heard Jake talk a little bit about today, and single sign-on, specifically looking at how Okta could be used as one of many single sign-on providers to set up single sign-on with Sugar.
And I will, as a reminder, be sending out the follow-up recording. Normally, of course, we'd also send out the registration for that, but bear with me as we switch webinar providers. I don't want you to have to register twice. So closer to May, you will get that registration link in your email. We'd just like to take a moment to thank Jake for his insights and also for shedding some light on what's coming down the pipeline. Lots of exciting additions. We're really looking forward to seeing those unfold. And from all of us at Technology Advisors, and I think I can say safely for Sugar as well, we're thinking of you. We hope that you're staying healthy and safe. We're still working, obviously, because we're here. So if you need absolutely anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we're happy to support you in any way that we can.
Great. And thank you, Deneen and Megan and Justin, for inviting me. It's been a pleasure speaking, and hope everyone stays safe out there.
Thank you. Everybody
Thanks,
have a great rest of your day.